The cold blue glow of the keypad at Secure Space Storage is a familiar sight now. It's become a ritual. I punch in my code, the heavy steel gate groans open, and I drive my car through the silent canyons of identical corrugated metal doors. It's funny, most people probably see these places as purgatories for their stuff. Boxes of old tax returns, furniture from a failed marriage, things you don't want but can't bring yourself to throw away. For me, it's the opposite. This place isn't where my past goes to die. It's where my soul comes to live. My headlights sweep across a long line of doors until they land on my own unit number 228B. I cut the engine and the silence of the facility presses in. The only sound is the gravel crunching under my boots as I walk to the door. There's a satisfying, heavy clank as I undo the padlock, and then the familiar metallic rattle as I heave the roll-up door open. And there it is, my sanctuary. The first thing that hits you isn't a sight, but a smell. It's a unique cocktail of old wood ozone from the electronics and the faint, sweet scent of the polish I use. It smells like history. It smells like my history. My apartment just a few miles from here is sparse. It's clean, modern, and has about as much personality as a hotel room. It's just a place I keep my clothes and sleep. But this 10 by 20-foot concrete box, this is my home. I step inside and pull the door down behind me, shutting out the rest of the world. For a moment, it's almost pitch black. Then my eyes adjust and I can see the single source of light. In the back corner, a Pac-Man machine is plugged into the unit's only outlet, its screen running through the demo mode. The iconic maze glows a hypnotic blue, casting long, dancing shadows across the room. Pac-Man chomps his way across the screen, pursued by Blinky and Pinky, their colorful forms painting streaks of light on the surfaces of the other machines. That single screen illuminates my entire world. Packed in here, Tetris-style, are 16 monoliths from a bygone era. My collection, 12 vintage arcade cabinets and 4 beautiful, complex pinball machines. They stand shoulder to shoulder, a silent army of joy waiting for a command. To anyone else, it's just a bunch of obsolete junk, clutter. But to me, each one is a chapter of my life. I started this journey 15 years ago. I was 17 working a summer job bussing tables, and I saved up every penny to buy that Pac-Man cabinet from a bowling alley that was renovating. I remember my dad helping me haul it home in his truck, both of us wondering if my mom was going to be furious with me for putting this giant glowing box in the garage. That machine was my first love. It represents that teenage feeling of absolute freedom, of having a passion that was entirely my own. Over the next 15 years, I added to it piece by piece. Hunting on classifieds websites, driving hours to dusty warehouses, learning how to solder and rewire circuit boards. Each machine has a story. The Donkey Kong cabinet I found in the back of a closing pizza parlor so coated in grime it took me a week just to clean it. The Addams Family pinball machine I bought from a collector in another state, a holy grail I'd been searching for years. This isn't just a hobby, it's a curated museum of my own life built one quarter at a time. Tonight my ritual is the same as it's been for the last 3 months ever since the breakup. I grab a soft microfiber cloth and a bottle of glass cleaner from a small shelf I installed. I make my way to one of the pinball machines. It's back glass art, a vibrant explosion of color, even in the dim light. I start at the top, gently wiping away the dust. The routine is meditative. The simple, repetitive motion of polishing the glass calms the noise in my head. It's a quiet comfort, a way of caring for something that can't talk back, can't argue, can't deliver an ultimatum. My mind drifts back to the way things were just a few months ago. The constant low-grade tension that had become the background noise of my life. Living with Isabella, especially in those final months, felt like walking through a minefield. Every conversation about the future, about money, about our life together, inevitably circled back to the collection. She never saw it the way I did. To her, it wasn't a passion, it was a problem. It was immature. It was a waste of space. It was money we could be using for the wedding. I try to explain. I'd tell her the story of the Pac-Man machine, how it was the first major thing I ever bought for myself. I'd show her the intricate wiring inside a cabinet, the beautiful mess of colored wires and chips that I had learned to navigate. I tried to share my world with her, but it was like she was speaking a different language. She would smile, nod, and say something like, "That's nice, honey, but have you seen what a wedding photographer costs?" The pressure was immense. It was a slow, crushing weight. I found myself spending less time with my machines, hiding my hobby like it was something to be ashamed of. If I bought a new set of capacitors online, I'd have the package delivered to my office. If I spent a Saturday afternoon tinkering with a faulty joystick, I'd downplay it, saying I was just cleaning out the garage. I was editing myself, sanding down the edges of my own identity to fit into the picture of the life she wanted. The person she was engaged to wasn't really me anymore. It was a version of me that was willing to give up the things that made me who I am. Here in the quiet hum of Unit 228B, there's no judgment, there's no pressure. There's just the gentle glow of the screen, the smell of old electronics, and the silent, reassuring presence of 15 years of my life. Wiping down the glass of the pinball machine, I see my own reflection. I'm 32 years old, standing in a storage unit in the middle of the night, polishing a game. And for the first time in a very long time, I feel a profound, unshakable sense of peace. The constant tension that used to live in my shoulders is gone. The knot in my stomach has disappeared. It's been 3 months since I ended it. 3 months since I moved all of this out of my house under the cover of a single week, a secret operation to save a part of myself. 3 months since I told her I couldn't go through with the wedding under her conditions. Some nights it's hard. Loneliness is a real thing. But then I come here. I slide the key into the lock roll up that door, and I'm reminded of what I was fighting for. It wasn't just for a bunch of old wooden boxes filled with wires. It was for the 17-year-old kid who saved up all his money for a dream. It was for the right to have a passion to love something that the rest of the world might not understand. Standing here surrounded by the flashing silent lights of my collection, I know I made the right choice. My apartment is empty, but my life feels full. The quiet isn't loneliness, it's peace. And that's a trade I would make again in a heartbeat. I let out a soft sigh of contentment, the scent of wood polish and ozone filling my lungs. The pinball machine gleamed under the single bare bulb of the storage unit. Satisfied, I moved on to the next patient. A classic Galaga cabinet, one of my favorites, had been acting up before the move. The joystick was a little sticky on the down left diagonal, and the audio had a faint crackle. Minor stuff. But to me, these machines aren't just objects. They are living history. They deserve to be perfect. I pulled up a small stool and got to work opening the back panel to check the wiring harness. The familiar organized chaos of the circuit boards was like a second language to me. Red to power, black to ground, green to signal. It's a puzzle with a definite solution, a world where logic and patience always win, the polar opposite of a relationship. For the next hour, I was completely lost in the task. I resoldered a loose connection on the sound amplifier, cleaned the contacts on the joystick microswitches, and tightened the monitor chassis bolts. The world outside Unit 228B ceased to exist. There was no Isabella, no broken engagement, no empty apartment. There was only me, the machine, and a problem I knew how to solve. Finally, I closed up the back and went around to the front to test it. I didn't have a quarter, so I reached for my keys to trip the coin mechanism manually. The little metal lever is tucked just inside the coin return slot. I pushed it in and heard the satisfying click-ding that signals a credit. But when I pulled my finger out the return slot door, a little chrome flap didn't fall back into place. It was stuck. I frowned. That's odd. I pushed it again. It was wedged tight on something. Probably just a piece of debris that got knocked loose during the move. I stuck my pinky finger into the slot, trying to feel for the obstruction. My finger brushed against something smooth and stiff like a thick piece of cardstock. I wiggled it, trying to get a grip, and slowly, carefully, I managed to pull it out. It was a photograph. A standard 4x6 print, a little bent from being crammed in the coin slot for who knows how long. For a moment, I just stared at it, confused. I never kept photos in the machines. Then I turned it over in the dim light, and the air left my lungs in a single painful rush. It was us, me and Isabella. The photo was taken just a year ago. I recognized the day instantly. It was the day I proposed. We were at the botanical gardens standing in front of a massive weeping willow tree whose branches cascaded down like a green waterfall. I was wearing a blue button-down shirt, the one she always said brought out my eyes. My arm was wrapped around her waist, and I was looking at her, not the camera. The smile on my face was wide, genuine, and completely unguarded. It was the smile of a man who had just bet everything on a single moment and won. And Isabella. She was radiant. She was laughing, her head thrown back slightly, her dark hair catching the afternoon sun. Her left hand was resting on my chest, and on her ring finger a small, simple diamond glittered, catching the light. She looked happy. No, not just happy. She looked certain as I felt. We both looked like we had just figured out the rest of our lives, and we couldn't believe how easy it was. My hand started to tremble. The peace I had felt just an hour ago, that profound, unshakable sense of calm, shattered like the glass on a pinball machine. It felt like a ghost had just appeared in my sanctuary, a ghost of a life I almost had, a ghost of the man I used to be. I remembered that day so clearly. I'd been carrying the ring in my pocket for a week, waiting for the perfect moment. I was so nervous my hands were sweating. I'd planned a whole speech, a long, heartfelt monologue about our future, our dreams, how she made me a better person. But when the moment came, when we were standing under that willow tree and the light was perfect, I forgot every single word. All I could say was, "Isabella Vance, I can't imagine a single day of my life without you in it. Will you marry me?" She didn't even hesitate. She just threw her arms around my neck and said, "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." We'd asked a stranger to take that picture of us right after. I must have tucked it into my pocket, and later when we went to the arcade on the pier, I must have used it to unjam a coin slot or something and then just forgot. It had been sitting inside this Galaga machine for a year, a forgotten time capsule from a different life. Staring at the photo, the carefully constructed walls I had built around my heart for the last 3 months began to crumble. The narrative I had been telling myself that I had saved myself, that I had chosen my identity over a toxic relationship, suddenly felt thin and brittle. Was it really that simple? Was she really that toxic? I looked at her face in the picture, the unrestrained joy in her eyes. That wasn't the face of a villain. That was the face of the woman I had loved more than anything in the world. The woman who made me laugh so hard I couldn't breathe. The woman who would bring me soup when I was sick and listen for hours when I was stressed about work. We had good times. We had so many good times. My mind started to race replaying the last year, but this time it wasn't focusing on the fights. It was focusing on the moments in between. The lazy Sunday mornings spent reading in bed. The inside jokes that no one else would ever understand. The way she would hum off key when she was cooking dinner. The little intimate details that weave 2 lives together into a single tapestry. And for the first time, a sliver of doubt, cold and sharp, pierced through my certainty. Was I too stubborn? Was I too rigid? The ultimatum had been about the collection, yes. She'd said it was a non-negotiable condition of our marriage. Sell the machines, all 12 cabinets, all 4 pinball machines. Use the money for a down payment on a house. Start our lives like adults. At the time, it felt like an attack on my very soul, a demand to amputate a part of myself. But now, looking at this picture, another question wormed its way into my brain. What if she was just scared I was 32, she was 31? All our friends were getting married, buying houses, having kids. Maybe she just saw this collection, my 15-year obsession, as a giant, blinking neon roadblock on the path to the future she envisioned. Maybe it wasn't about hating my passion. Maybe it was about her own fear of not having the life everyone told her she was supposed to have. Could I have compromised? The thought was agonizing. I had seen it as an all-or-nothing choice, her way or my way. But what if there was a third path? What if I had offered to sell half or just the pinball machines? What if I had sat her down away from the noise and the wedding planning stress and really truly tried to find a middle ground? The thought twisted in my gut like a knife. The pride I felt in my secret pre-breakup operation of moving the collection here suddenly felt childish, sneaky. I hadn't been a hero defending my honor. I had been a coward avoiding a difficult conversation. I secured my assets, yes, but I didn't even try to save the relationship. I just ran. I hid my toys, and then I ended it. The silence of the storage unit was no longer peaceful. It was deafening. The dim light from the single bulb no longer felt comforting. It felt cold and clinical, like an operating room. The machines surrounding me didn't feel like a collection of memories anymore. They felt like evidence. Exhibit A in the case of why I was alone. Each one represented a choice. A choice to spend money on a circuit board instead of a weekend trip with her. A choice to spend a Saturday fixing a monitor instead of going to the farmer's market with her. A choice to prioritize my past over our future. I sank down onto the stool, the photograph still clutched in my hand. The happy faces of the two strangers in the picture mocked me. They had no idea what was coming. They had no idea that the foundation of their perfect future was riddled with cracks. They thought love was enough. They were wrong. The question echoed in the oppressive silence of the unit, a question I hadn't allowed myself to truly ask until now. Was it worth it? I looked around at the silent, hulking shapes. The Pac-Man cabinet I bought when I was 17, the pinball machine I spent 6 months restoring, all of it. My life's work, my passion. I had saved it. It was all here safe and sound in Unit 228B. But I was alone. And in that moment, for the first time in 3 months, I wasn't sure I had made the right choice at all. I finally pushed myself off the stool, my legs stiff. I couldn't stand to be in that room for another second. I switched off the overhead light, plunging the machines back into darkness, and locked the heavy metal door of Unit 228B behind me. The sound of the padlock clicking shut felt final, like I was locking away a part of myself. The drive back to my apartment was a blur. The familiar streets felt alien, and every car that passed with a couple inside felt like a personal judgment. I walked into my apartment, and the emptiness hit me like a physical blow. When we were together, this place had been filled with life. Her ridiculously large collection of throw pillows on the couch, her half-finished mug of tea on the coffee table, the scent of her perfume lingering in the air. Now it was just furniture. Sterile. A showroom for a life that wasn't being lived. The silence I had once mistaken for peace now felt like a crushing weight. Loneliness. This was what it was. Not freedom, not independence. Just a profound, aching loneliness. I tossed my keys onto the counter, the clatter echoing in the quiet. My phone was lying there, and on instinct I picked it up. My thumb hovered over the Photos app, and against my better judgment, I opened it. I started scrolling back, past the last 3 months of solo hikes and pictures of my dinner, and then, there she was, Isabella. A year ago at that stupid street fair with cotton candy stuck to her nose. 18 months ago on the beach laughing as a wave soaked her. 2 years ago asleep on my couch with a book on her chest. I scrolled and scrolled a digital ghost tour of our entire relationship. The good times. God, there were so many good times. We weren't always fighting about the future. We weren't always at odds over my hobby. For a long time, we were just us. Happy. In love. The person in these photos, the smiling, carefree man standing next to her, felt like a complete stranger to me now. The question from the storage unit came back louder this time. Could I have compromised the memory of the ultimatum? The real one finally broke through the nostalgic haze. It wasn't a calm discussion. It was after a long, tense dinner with her parents, where her dad had made a joke about my expensive toys. We got home and the air was thick with things unsaid. She stood in the living room, arms crossed, and her voice was flat, devoid of the warmth I loved. Mason, She said, "We need to be serious. The wedding is in 6 months. We need a down payment. We need to grow up." I remember just looking at her confused, and then she delivered the line. "The collection. You need to sell it. All of it. It's not a negotiation. It's a condition. A condition. Not a request. Not a starting point for a conversation. A condition for her love. A condition for our future." She called it immature. She said it was holding us back. She saw 15 years of my life, the thing I poured my heart and soul into since I was a teenager, as nothing more than an obstacle. A roadblock on the way to a mortgage and a minivan. I didn't run away from a conversation. I ran away from an execution. She was asking me to execute a part of my own history, to take 15 years of my identity, box it up, and sell it to the highest bidder, so we could have the life her parents thought we should have. Selling half wouldn't have mattered. Selling just the pinball machines wouldn't have solved the problem. The problem wasn't the machines themselves. The problem was me, the part of me that loved them. That was the part she wanted gone. The apartment felt like it was closing in on me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I felt trapped between a past that looked perfect in photographs and a future that felt like a betrayal of myself. I grabbed my keys. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get out. My car seemed to drive itself, taking the familiar route back through the deserted streets until I was standing once again in front of the cold, corrugated metal door of Unit 228B. It was almost 2 in the morning. The air was cold and still. I fumbled with the key, my hands shaking slightly, and swung the door open. The familiar smell of old electronics and wood polish washed over me. I didn't turn on the harsh overhead light this time. Instead, I walked through the darkness, my hand trailing along the cool vinyl sides of the cabinets until I found the one I was looking for. I knelt down and plugged in the power cord for the Pac-Man machine. The cabinet hummed to life. The screen flickered, and then the iconic maze appeared glowing in the dark, casting a warm yellow light on my face. This was it, the first one. The one I bought for $150 when I was 17, money I had saved up for an entire summer working at a grocery store. I remember hauling it home in my friend's pickup truck, my heart pounding with excitement. I spent weeks taking it apart, cleaning every connection, replacing every burnout bulb. It was the machine that started it all. I dropped a quarter into the slot. I always keep a few in the coin return for moments like this. The familiar waka 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 sound filled the silence. My hand fell onto the joystick, my fingers wrapping around the red ball top. It was an extension of my own arm. I started to play. Left, up, right, down. Chomp the dots. Avoid the ghosts. Get the power pellet. The pattern was simple, unchanging. It was the same game it was 15 years ago. It was the same game it was 40 years ago. And as I played, the noise in my head started to fade. The doubts, the regrets, the painful nostalgia. It all just melted away, replaced by the simple, pure focus of the game. I wasn't the 32-year-old man with a failed engagement and an empty apartment anymore. I was the 17-year-old kid again, full of passion and excitement for this one singular thing that I loved. This machine, this entire collection, it wasn't a roadblock to my future. It was my future. It was my past, my present, and my future all wrapped up in one. It was the story of who I was written in circuit boards and CRT screens. And in that moment, under the solitary glow of the Pac-Man screen, I had a moment of absolute soul-shaking clarity. Isabella's ultimatum was never about the money. It was never about the space. It was a test to see if she could mold me into the man she thought she wanted, the man her friends had, the man her parents approved of. The choice she gave me wasn't the collection or me. The choice was, erase 15 years of your life or me. It was, stop being you and be with me. And I finally understood. I hadn't made the wrong choice. I had made the only choice I could have possibly made to remain myself. A compromise would have been a lie. It would have been a slow-motion surrender, selling off pieces of myself, one by one, until there was nothing left but the man she wanted me to be. Our relationship wasn't a tapestry woven together. It was a battle of wills, and I had been losing slowly without even realizing it. A wave of relief so powerful it almost brought me to my knees washed over me. The knot of guilt and regret that had been twisting in my stomach for hours finally blessedly uncoiled. I hadn't been a coward. I had been a survivor. I finished my game of Pac-Man, my name blinking at the top of the high score list. Then a slow smile spread across my face. One by one, I walked through the unit, plugging in every single machine. The pinball machines lit up their back glass art, glowing like stained glass windows. Galaga, Donkey Kong Street Fighter 2. They all flickered to life. I put them all in attract mode, and the space filled with a symphony of explosions, jingles, and digitized voices. The dark, silent mausoleum was transformed into a vibrant, living, breathing arcade. My arcade. I stood in the middle of it, all the light and sound swirling around me. It wasn't a monument to a failed relationship. It was a testament to my own identity. It was beautiful. I pulled out my phone one last time. I found the photo of me and Isabella, the one that had fallen out of the Galaga machine. I looked at her smiling face, and I didn't feel anger or sadness anymore. I just felt acceptance. We were two people who wanted different lives, and that was okay. I held my finger over the screen and I hit delete. Then I went through my camera roll and deleted every other picture of us. It wasn't an act of rage, it was an act of peace. A final, quiet closing of a chapter. Weeks later, the sun was streaming through the large storefront window of a small, vacant commercial property. The air smelled of fresh paint and possibility. I held a tape measure in one hand and a set of blueprints in the other, mapping out where each machine would go. There was a perfect spot for the pinball machines along the brick wall and a row for the classics right by the entrance. My phone rang. I saw my friend's name and answered, a wide grin on my face. "Hey, you're not going to believe this," I said, my voice buzzing with an energy I hadn't felt in years. "I'm doing it. I'm really doing it. I'm moving the collection out of storage. No, not selling it. I'm opening a place, a retro arcade bar. Yeah, a real one. A place for people who love these things as much as I do." That evening, I made one last trip to secure space storage. I walked into Unit 228B, the machines all silent again, waiting. I walked over to the Pac-Man cabinet, the one that started it all, the one that had saved me from myself. I pulled out a freshly printed sign from my bag. It was simple with a retro pixelated font. It read, "Coming soon." I taped it carefully to the glass screen. My passion wasn't going to be hidden in the dark anymore. It was about to have its grand opening. And so was I.